Hello, my friends. Thank you for being here today to watch this edition of Ignite Your Wow. I'm Kellen Ann, and I'm your host today. I have a special guest today that you're really going to be excited about. But first, let's talk about some sponsors. Blue Sky Video Productions. Bruce is my producer. He's the producer extraordinaire. If you need help doing a live stream and you get confused easily like I do with pushing buttons and bringing people on and taking people out, he's the guy for you. He's also a YouTube strategist, so you can utilize him and his knowledge, his vast knowledge, and get more followers and work that algorithm. Bruce, do you have a tip for me today?
Sure, definitely. So I know last week we talked about cybersecurity and passwords. So over the week, what happened was the password protection program I was using decided it wasn't going to upgrade to the new iOS.
Oh.
And I upgraded my phone to the new iOS and efficiently lost all of my saved passwords. So, which actually forced me to start resetting all of the passwords to all the programs that I've ever wanted to use. So whether you are forced to reset your passwords on a frequent basis or do it voluntarily, it's always a good idea to reset your passwords on a regular basis.
Thank you for reminding everybody what I don't do. Thanks, Bruce. That was awesome. Okay, so also our sponsor is me, Cards That Wow. I have so much fun creating cards for my clients, and as gifts for my people that let me interview them, I make them a complimentary set of gift cards. And I really had fun making Pat's because his turned out so cool. And I used a new format paper, so there are no limits. If you want to send Cards That Wow, contact me and we can custom design just about anything. So today, you heard me say Pat, my guest is a playwright. Showtime declared him one of the funniest people in America. He's a writer, he's a producer, and now he has this amazing podcast that I want to introduce you to today. So let's help me welcome Pat Hazell. Welcome.
Why, thank you. I don't even know which way to look in this thing.
So you got to look at the opposite. So if you're looking at the screen, you got to look at the opposite.
I see. So it's like being a weatherman and pointing at Chicago and talking about Toledo's weather. I got you. Well, thanks for having me. It's that was quite a nice animated ignition.
Do you like that? Bruce made that for me. That's the beauty of having a producer.
And I see some of your familiar faces already popping up.
Yep, they're popping on right now. So, you're the second time. This is the second time you've been on my. This is the first time you've been on my show. The first time you were part of my Zoom call, weren't you?
It was some kind of breakfast flakes wake up call or something.
It was coffee. Oh,
coffee. Right.
So thank you for coming back in my new, I've joined the digital era and I've gone live, and I'm excited to have you back. And I'm really excited to talk about your new podcast. I've had a chance to listen to 3 of the episodes, and I think everyone will put up your information so people can subscribe. But I love that it's a conversation with creatives. And I feel like I'm like sitting at a table with you and your guest, and I'm just kind of sitting there listening, and you go back and forth, and it's just really, it's fun, it's informational, and it's a good listen. So I did give you 5 stars. So do you want to talk about how this came about?
I can. I often consult on creative projects and in capacities people aren't aware of, because I've been a producer and a director and a writer and so forth. So over the years, I just realized I had this big catalog of very creative friends. And when things got a little quiet in the last year and a half, we were still developing projects, but they didn't have dates to start, or theaters weren't available, or commercial shoots were delayed and so forth. And so I started to think, well, wait, these conversations I have are valuable enough to share with other people if the client or the collaborator consents to it. And then I thought, well, rather than do that specific thing, maybe we could generalize it more and create some, golden nuggets about the process, the creative process, fears, conflicts, how, it's things that we all face, and it doesn't really matter how you're using your creativity, in what fashion. So I feel like it's fairly transferable. And I decided that on every episode, I would pick a new discipline. So sometimes it's a director, sometimes it's a producer or an animator. I've got a cellist coming up. The one this Thursday is a aerial choreographer for Pink and Cher and so forth. And so it's really interesting. What does she do differently? How does she face the world in her job and in her livelihood? And I really tried to stay away from pandemic times and COVID concerns, because it feels like it's time now more than ever to be creative about how you see your art or how you see your message. I know that you have lots of friends that are business folks and that are writers and that are, live streamers and all that kind of thing. And all of it comes down to the same thing. You're creating content. So
I think that creative is a misunderstood word when you're a creative, because I think a lot of, the linear thinking, more analytical people think, oh, you're a painter, but it's not. It's so much more than that. And that's really, I was kind of in that same thing. I thought, well, I'm a sculptor and I paint a little, but in my business now, I really feel like a creative. And I think that getting that out, because even an accountant is a creative. Can you do your own taxes in nice little boxes and save you money? That's creative to me.
Right. But now there's a lot of uses, and there are people who literally fight the word. There are very creative people I talk to on this that say, I don't like that word. I'm just a problem solver. And, this is a guy that executive produces David Copperfield's show in Las Vegas and solves problems and figures out mysteries that none of us could. But to him, it's just a gig, So that's not how he uses his creativity. But I just think that almost everything we're doing, whether you're taking somebody on a date or whatever, there's a way to make it a little bit more interesting, make it a little bit more memorable, find a funnier way to say it, find some way that the take home is there. And it's just, it really is, creative to me is just the opposite of boring, so, it applies to a lot of things. And because I started as a kid that did magic and juggling and then stand-up comedy and then theater and so forth, I realized this was the transferable common denominator. Was I didn't really care about the specific way I did it, as long as I found a new way to do it. And this particular medium, we're an audio only podcast, and people go, why would you do that? If you can have the image. And partly it was that I was picking high profile guests, and I didn't want them to think about being performative. What do I look like on camera? What, how many people does that mean I have to have come in? I wanted it more to be intimate, candid conversations, and them not to feel like they were being, having to put on a show. Right.
It was like the raw or the real, the non-performing. It was the person. And that's another thing that I really like about your conversations. How you're just choosing people that or do you have like a plan of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to hit this medium, or do you just kind of go, I'm going to talk to this person? Or because sometimes
we started off we started off with a list. And when I was first contacted about hosting something and I made a list, they thought it was like a pie in the sky, crazy, to have Pete Docter from Pixar,
right,
the chief creative officer, on. They're like, well, we can't get that guy. I go, I'll just call him. Like this is somebody I work with or vacation with. So some of the ones on the list, they were coming up. The fifth one is Frank Oz, and Frank was Jim Henson's partner with the Muppets and has directed so many great comedy movies and is the voice of Miss Piggy and Yoda and all kinds of folks. He's a very smart dude, In fact, he directed a really cool thing on Hulu called In and of Itself, which was a one-man show that I recommend folks check out, just because it's a very inventive approach to storytelling about identity and illusion and so forth.
I like that.
And I seek out those kinds of experiences because it takes a lot to really, like, as you say, ignite the wow. How do we find that, that next interesting thing that's going to bring out the wonder in us that we experienced when we were a kid?
Well, that's exactly what happened. I listened to your podcast. I follow you on Facebook, and I think we've run into each other in Clubhouse a few times. And when I found out about your podcast, I listened to it right away and went, wow, he just made me wow. I need to have him on my show because that's what my show's about.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate being involved in this. It really, I am lucky. I get the seat of curiosity. So while I sometimes tell people about a project I'm doing or whatever, I'm really just the lucky person that gets to be there to ask questions and see if I can't, bring out some kind of take home value. Because I feel like more now than ever, people need some kind of a booster shot. And we deliver it every Thursday because we figure over the weekend or before they get into their work week, in a commute situation or exercising, or if you're just drawing in your studio or writing or doing something else, that we can be a companion for part of an hour.
So we are the yin and yang of podcasts, because mine is I just talk because I haven't figured out how to add music, but yours is a beautiful full-on production. You had a song written, right? And it's got this great introduction. And so how long did it take for you to figure out all that before you would, lay down the first?
No, we're just working. I'm really flying by the seat of my pants, but I do like that stuff. I said to myself, well, if the show's about creativity, then we need to do it in a creative way. And so I contacted Maya Sharp, who's a writer for Bonnie Raitt and the Dixie Chicks and lots of other, or the Chicks, I guess they're called now. There's so many different kinds of musicians, and we had worked together on another project, and I said, you want to collaborate on a theme song? And she came up with the music, and we co-wrote the lyrics, and it's on Creativity, and it's kind of nice. We have several more parts to it that when we start to add commercials or sponsors, we'll be able to bridge in and out with that kind of music, but also is discovering the musical moments in the show when guests speak about things. I think you probably heard the Palin Chow episode.
Yeah, is it her son?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was beautiful.
I think he's 11 or 12 years old, Bailey, and he wrote this composition during COVID called The Confined Mind, and it's piano and violin. Of which he can play both, but apparently he writes music at a higher level than he can play. And so therefore the mom commissioned a violinist and a piano player to play the composition, which is what we debuted on that second episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, it was super cool. And I'll tell you what, in episode 6, there's this great cellist from Atlanta. Her name is Jen Cornell. And Jen is also a film scoring expert, and she loops cello. She'll pluck it, she'll use her bow, she'll do all that, and she'll build the song to the movie. So when I found that out, I just sort of improvisationally challenged her to, if I told her some story scenarios, could she translate it to some kind of emotional music bed? And she did that with 6 or 7 different scenarios, really on the fly. And to me, it was so impressive. We didn't send her any information in advance, or, she was able to like plug into her system and play the songs as kind of an original mini desk concert for us.
So you probably have like an idea of what you're going to talk about on the podcast, but when you were talking about the song got mentioned about, that the son had written, like, did you just all of a sudden add that in, or did she talk about that beforehand, or, because was that just kind of we're going this way now?
Yeah, I literally don't write questions. I write 2 questions. I write an opening question, and then I don't even write a closing question. I typically try to frame up some kind of exit. And then I just listen. It's like a river flowing sort of thing.
Yep.
And while we're talking, sometimes I'll make a side note to my producer or somebody, which is see if they'll share that piano song with us, or, can we, in Jen's case, she played them live, so we didn't have to do anything. But she referred to some piece of music called the Milonga, which I think is a Cuban sort of super urgent, fast-paced song that she is a master of. And once somebody says that, you go, we want to hear that. So in Open Mike Eagle, who is episode 3,
Mhm.
he was great. He talked about writing a rap song while he was doing the dishes.
Oh, he's a teacher, right?
He was a teacher in the day and an indie rapper at night.
Yeah. I remember.
But when he got into, he talked about really what I would call the incubation period, when you're in between things and you're trying to create something. So he found that when he works on something mindless, a task like washing the dishes, it sort of frees his mind up. And so consequently, he wrote a song about washing the dishes that he raps. And so he shared that with us too. So, it just kind of depends on, I call it an audio map, which is if something surfaces that tells the story better, then we'll add it in and, we'll find a way to do it.
Yeah. I just love the format. And I've been listening to podcasts forever, so I've heard this and this, and it's just super entertaining.
Well, we're new to it, and we don't know what we're doing, but we're having a good time.
You wouldn't know it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know it. So I forgot what I was going to ask you. I want to talk more about creatives. How would you define creative?
To me, it's just about looking at the world through a different lens. It's about birthing things into the world, because I feel like being original is difficult in many ways, especially because when you're derivative of something, sometimes you can carry the brand identity, like it's almost like it's a sequel, or you are able to describe it as saying, oh, this is like that. But when it's nothing like anything, when a Lin-Manuel Miranda comes along with a Hamilton or In the Heights sort of thing, it is kind of its own thing. And sort of the genesis of taking something historical like Hamilton, which in the biography is a very, dry, deep, dense piece of content, and melding it with hip hop and casting it in a multicultural way, doing all that, that's like opening up everybody's mind and heart and a door to new opportunity, which, I salute that kind of project, because kids learn more about history, interest comes in whatever, it brings people together in so many ways. And I mean, there are so many ways that creativity can make something better, whether it's planning a block party or doing something else. And I think if you just pick up the old plans from last year's party and do it the same way, you're not, it's no fun. And many times it's a creative process that is co-parenting, whether it's two singer-songwriters who make a better song by one having one talent and one having the other. If the lyrics are inspired by something and the story tells in a different way. So I don't know that I have a real clear and clean definition, but I think that most people have a greater desire to be creative. Maybe their job or the things that they do that keep some stability coming in, don't allow them a lot of flexibility to be creative. And the people that you look at and say, wow, look at that person. In some ways, they've just given their self permission to think completely outside the box, or in the box, or on the edge of the box, or have no box at all. Like they don't judge themselves by the rules. And, there's just so many interesting people out in the world that nobody's heard of. And so my hope is that I'm amplifying the voices of different disciplines, diverse voices, places that we wouldn't think of, that can kind of give us an aha in some way.
Yeah, it's a fun process, and it looks like you're really enjoying it. Is there anything in the future, anything that you can share with my viewers that's coming up that nobody knows about yet, or any top secret?
No, a lot of top secret stuff, but it's the only reason I wouldn't say it is that if the guest is sharing it, I would rather it come from their voice. But boy, I'll tell you what, like when I talked to Pete Docter, it was in December. His movie Soul opened right then around Christmas. He has since won a third Oscar and had, his thing is, you can see it on, any number of places on Disney Plus and so forth. My second guest, Palin Chow, was nominated for an Academy Award as the producer of Over the Moon. So what's interestingly is that—
Oh, I love that. I love that Over the Moon.
Yeah, she was great. And well, in the meantime, she directed a really amazing Asian American short documentary in May when this was the AAPI was had a lot of attention, but it was so good that all the other Pixar and DreamWorks and all the other animation companies featured her short doc on their social media and so forth. And we added it. We have a website that's creativity and captivity.fun. And so we were able to link her short film. Like, that's the whole goal of this, is to find the things that are worthy of, curating things that other people want to see. And it doesn't cost anything for us to, it's a way of sharing our privilege and our voice by bringing other people along. So that to me is the interesting stuff. And people have put out albums since that have been released, Netflix specials that have come out, being cast in things that are now coming to life. Things are opening on Broadway again. We talked to the guy who played King George III in Hamilton, and so it's things are loosening up so fast that we try to update it before that goes on the air. So those intros that I do, I write just before before it airs.
That was my next question. Like, do you have to update them when they win this award or start this movie? But you just answered that. So
I try to do it because I feel like it's a respectful thing for the guest, and we're not really a promotional show in that we don't sell tickets for Friday night. We're creating what I call a legacy library, which is that when do you get to spend an hour with Frank Oz talking about how Jim Henson works or what it was like? I mentioned about Jim was a big guy. He was 6'3" or something. And when Kermit the Frog is singing in the middle of a pond, they have to hide Jim's body. He's got to be there. You're
right.
He's underneath in a waterproof can with his arm up, doing this kind of thing. So you don't think about that kind of stuff. So, and he talked about the truth and honesty when he directs and so forth, how it's honest impulse to honest impulse, that it's not about trying to make it funny. The funny is a result of playing it in a truthful way.
Right. That makes total sense.
So I don't think there's one guest we've had on that didn't surprise me with some really interesting way of looking at the world or their project or themselves. And I also think that everybody realizes we're much more alike than we are different.
Does it make you realize, because sometimes we put people like that on these pedestals, like, oh my gosh, we're not worthy. But did it humanize some of them to you?
I always talk to people on a human level. I mean, humanity to me, it's very important to me. So I'm not, it's not that I'm not starstruck, but at the same time, I feel like why these conversations work is that I don't, I'm cautious not to treat it in a way that would be fan-like. So Jason Alexander, who played George Costanza on Seinfeld, is somebody that I worked with. He was kind enough to do it. But in the course of our relationship, I've seen him in shows on Broadway. He has other talents besides that. So I didn't focus on it. And I think he appreciated it, finding out that he's into ceramics and what is it like to be in a Broadway show and do 7 or 8 shows a week. What is that routine like? He shared with us a really interesting version of what that week is, because he had been called by Larry David because Larry was going to do a show on Broadway for the first time a couple of years ago and knew nothing of it. And, Jason actually took the glamour out of it to say, here's how hard you work. Here's what happens. Here's what the routine is. He goes, after 2 shows, it's not, you don't even want to schlep yourself to the theater every day. And then when you're in the show, it's fantastic at the moment. And then when it's over, and then you're in for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 3 months, 4 months, whatever, it's a crazy amount of routine. And you actually have to carry that performance. It's not like television or movies. Once it's recorded and edited, it's consistent. You got to recreate that every single night on that stage.
That would be so exhausting, mentally and physically.
It is. It is quite grueling during the period of time that you're in it. And therefore you want to save your voice, which means you go to bed early, which means you have no social life and so forth. So it isn't all the glamour, but there are people who are cut from that cloth and who are tremendously good at it. So
do you ever have a desire to be on Broadway?
I would do it if it didn't cost me $1 million, but I have done the end around on Broadway.
Right.
I adore Broadway shows. I love going to them. I feel like even if you pay $100 for a ticket, you're getting a lot for your money. You know, the stage craftsmanship, the costumes, the inventive approach, the development of a show, which takes 7 to 10 years to get to the stage. It's worth it. It's a viable investment, and it's a decidedly American export. So it is something that we do very well here in America. But I have looked into, or people have talked to me about the touring shows that I have, and they say, why don't you play off Broadway, or why don't you go to Broadway? Well, it takes so much money to open the door and get the curtain up that you spend a great deal of time recovering that cost. And I do an end around on it. I try to take it to the road first and go to little towns and little jewel box theaters, build a reputation, and start making money on ticket sales immediately. And then we can pay the debt off a lot faster. And so I guess knowing the business model, it's hard to borrow millions and millions of dollars, because you have to have billboards and cab toppers and this thing. There's a lot to do, not to mention that you have to pay the rent of a Broadway theater. Even on the nights there's no show on Monday, you're renting it. Tuesday, you're renting it, right? So, you're only using it for a few hours a night, and you to keep control of it, you have to keep paying for it.
Wow. You mean you don't just go for a costume fitting and then perform?
It turns out they don't do that anymore. Yeah.
No, this is amazing. I know we're getting close to where we need to stop because you have another appointment. Is there anything that you would like to talk about or tell the guests about to?
No. I mean, here's the thing. I do not want this to be a commercial, but I will say that I'm particularly proud of the podcast. And if people listen, if they enjoy it, or if they subscribe, I will assure them that I have, a year's worth of Thursdays to give them some kind of information. And then if they're listening on Apple, any of those, that if they want to dash off a review, I don't know how any of that works. I don't know the analytics and the whatever, but I do know that it seems to help it show up on a podcast preview thing or whatever. And so we spent time making the show. We have spent exactly 0 time promoting it. And so this is really the beginning of our putting the word out. And I think I have a lot of subcultures or groups that are comedians, that are songwriters, that are salespeople, that are speakers, that are, those kinds of places. And that you and I met through Jeffrey Gittimer's, morning thing. I just need to sort of start going to each of those and letting my subgroups know that we're ready we're in business. Like the fruit and vegetable stand is open, and we'll always keep it loaded,
I always call it my worlds. I've got my college world, my high school world, my pizza restaurant world, but they're all in one place. It's really convenient to have Facebook, and it's really good for that. Okay. I ask my guests, every guest, the same question. How do you define wow?
How do I define wow? It feels to me like it has some level of extraordinary emotional impact. So there's an aha in it, which is usually a feeling of wonder or whimsy or marvel in some way. And, it's kind of a better word now than awesome, because awesome has been exploited to be everything from a good club sandwich to whatever. And I think it's lost its awesomeness. But I think wow is kind of a high level emotional booster shot.
I like that. So hopefully when I send you these, they will make you wow.
That's a pretty cool thing. When you held it up earlier, is it leveled? Is it like 3D?
No, it's not done yet, because I didn't think it was going to take so long, but it's 3-dimensional.
Okay. Yeah, there seems to be a lot of cutting.
But I had so much fun making this one. And cool. I still put your name on it.
I can show people how accurate you are.
I'm pretty close with the colors. I am.
Yes, that's pretty great.
So cool. I'll be mailing these out as soon as I finish them. But I'm like, they're so cool. I had these, and it's a whole new format size. So usually I do an A4, and these are 5.5 by 5.5. So these are cool. So I will get those to you as soon as we.
And are your cards that wow at some kind of website or someplace, or do they just come to you directly?
No, well, I send them samples and then they usually order. But I have my website's being built now, so hopefully I'll be able to, get some traffic there.
I like. Oh, look, Wes Wyatt, who I think is quite awesome. He still likes awesome because you can't spell it without Wes. Fantastic. I like that.
We could let's pop in and see if some of our other people. Phil,
yeah, why not? But it's funny.
Here.
Let me say to Wes, that's what I like about the word creative is it's got eat right in the middle of it. So the lunch break is built right in.
I love that. So Coach
there's Phil. I see Phil. He's
John
saying
Cooper.
Hello. He's been a long time follower and amplifier of ideas and quotes and things.
Good job. Would love to be a guest on your show and can talk. And you can be a guest on my and discuss your great work. I'm sure he's talking to you, not me.
He could be talking to Wes, who's great too. So
true.
It's sort of an open invitation for anybody.
I think we should all jump on it. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate your time. I'm going to continue to listen and tell my world about your podcast, Creativity in Captivity. If you enjoyed today's show, please like and share so more people can get some of this great wisdom. And also subscribe to my YouTube channel and like me on Facebook so you don't miss any other shows. So thanks to our sponsor, Blue Sky Video Productions and moi, Cards That Wow, and especially Pat Hazell for being our guest today. We'll see you next week.
Cheers.